Hello, the child says on the phone. Hi, honey, this is Daddy. Is Mommy near the phone? No, Daddy, says the little girl. She's upstairs in the bedroom with Uncle Paul. After a brief pause, Daddy says, But honey, you haven't gotten Uncle Paul. Oh, yes, I do, and he's upstairs in the room with Mommy right now. Dad takes a deep breath. Okay, then. This is what I want you to do. Put the phone down, run upstairs, knock on the bedroom door, and shout to Mommy that Daddy's car just pulled into the driveway. Okay, Daddy, just a minute, says the little girl. A few minutes later, the little girl comes back to the phone. I did it, Daddy. What happened, honey? He asks. Well, Mommy got all scared, jumped out of bed with no clothes on, and ran around screaming. Then she tripped over the rug, hit her head on the dresser, and now she isn't moving at all. Oh, my God, what about your Uncle Paul? Asked Dad in a panic. He jumped out of the bed with no clothes on, too. He was all scared, and he jumped out of the back window and into the swimming pool. But I guess he didn't know that you took out all the water last week to clean the pool. He hit the bottom of the pool, and I think he's dead. There's a long pause on the phone. Then Daddy says, Swimming pool. Is this 486 to 5,731 inches? A guy wanted an assistant to help him hunt gorillas. As he is talking to a prospective assistant, he explains to him the process. We need a net, a gun, and the dog for this. We go to the jungle, I spot a gorilla, and I go up the tree to wrestle with him and throw him off the tree. The dog is trained. As soon as the gorilla is on the ground, it runs and grabs the gorilla by his nuts. At this point, I throw the net over him, and we capture him. The assistant thinks for a minute and asks, Then what would we need a gun for? He responds, Isn't it obvious? There is a small chance for the gorilla to throw me off the tree instead, so you have to shoot the dog before it gets to me and commences its nut grabbing. A man wakes up one morning with a huge erection that just won't go away. After a couple of days, he is really concerned, so he puts on the baggiest pair of trousers he can find and heads for the drugstore. He enters the store and goes to the pharmaceutical section. The lady there asks if she might help him. He asks to see a male pharmacist. The woman tells him that there is no male pharmacist. The man starts to leave. The woman says, Wait a minute, sir. I am a registered pharmacist, as is my sister, and we own the store. We are very professional and discreet and accustomed to personal problems of all kinds. The guy is desperate. He edges up to the counter, unzips his trousers, and gets out his rather stiff member. He then says, What can you give me for this? The woman says, How long has it been that way? The man responds, Almost 3 days. The woman says, I will have to consult with my sister, and I'll be right back. She leaves and returns in a few minutes. The man asks, What did you decide? She says, The best we can do right now is $5,000 and a half interest in the drugstore. A little old lady answered a knock on the door one day, only to be confronted by a well-dressed young man carrying a vacuum cleaner. Good morning, said the young man. If I could take a couple of minutes of your time, I would like to demonstrate the very latest in high-powered vacuum cleaners. Go away, said the old lady. I haven't got any money. She proceeded to close the door. Quick as a flash, the young man wedged his foot in the door and pushed it wide open. Don't be too hasty, he said. Not until you have at least seen my demonstration. And with that, he emptied a bucket of horse manure onto her hallway carpet. If this vacuum cleaner does not remove all traces of this horse manure from your carpet, I will personally eat the remainder. Well, she said, I hope you have a damned good appetite because the electricity was cut off this morning. A man from the city goes goose hunting one weekend. He is a pretty bad hunter, so he doesn't hit anything for a long time. On the second day, he finally is able to hit one. Unfortunately, the goose drops on the property of a farmer. By the time the man gets there, the farmer has already picked up the goose and claims it is his because it fell on his property. The city man argues it's his because he shot it down. After a little while, the farmer explains, when we have an argument here, we have a simple solution for that. We kick each other in the nuts, and the one who stays quieter wins. The man doesn't want to look like a wimp, so he agrees. The farmer puts on a heavy pair of boots and kicks the man as hard as he can. The man goes to the ground, whimpers a little bit, but is able to get up after 10 minutes, thinking he did a pretty good job. When he gets ready to kick the farmer The farmer just hands him the goose and says, "Here, you have it." It was cold and pouring with rain, but the boy's mother insisted he go to the barn and feed the animals before he could have breakfast. The boy went out in a dark rage, kicked the chickens, punched the cow, and threw water all over the pigs. When he got back inside, his mother was furious. "How dare you?" she fumed. "I saw what you did. You get no eggs because you kicked the chickens, no milk because you thumped the cow, and no bacon because of the way you treated the pigs." Just then, Dad came down the stairs, and nearly tripping over the cat, he gave the animal a mighty kick. The boy turned to his mother and said, "Are you going to tell him or shall I?" On a cold, snowy day, a man's car has a flat tire in front of a mental hospital. As he's trying to change the tire, several patients are watching him through holes in the fence. He puts the hubcap down on the snow and starts putting the loose lug nuts in the hubcap. When he gets the wheel off, he accidentally steps on the edge of the hubcap, and the lug nuts go flying off into the snow. "Oh no," he laments. "What do I do now?" One of the patients says to him, "Easy. Just take one lug nut off each of the other 3 wheels and use those 3 to hold the spare on, and that will get you to where you can get more lug nuts." "Oh my gosh," says the driver. "I assumed you guys were crazy. How did you figure that out?" The patient then says, "Hey, we're crazy, but we're not stupid." A man gets home early from work and hears strange noises coming from the bedroom. He rushes upstairs to find his wife naked on the bed, sweating and panting. "What's up?" he says. "I'm having a heart attack," cries the woman. He rushes downstairs to grab the phone, but just as he's dialing, his 4-year-old son comes up and says, "Daddy! Daddy! Uncle Ted's hiding in your closet and he's got no clothes on!" The guy slams the phone down and storms upstairs into the bedroom, walks past his screaming wife, and rips open the wardrobe door. Sure enough, there is his brother, totally naked, cowering on the closet floor. "What are you doing?" says the husband. "My wife's having a heart attack and you're running around naked scaring the kids." A university lecturer is struggling to please his wife in the bedroom. He notices that a student in his class, Andre, is always speaking to the female students and seems very popular with the ladies. One day after a lecture, he approaches Andre. "Things haven't been great in the bedroom with the wife, and you seem to be popular with the ladies. Do you have any advice for me?" "Of course," Andre smiles. "Here's what you need to do. Before you make love, you must take out your manhood and bang it on a table 3 times. Then you will make love like never before, and your wife will surely be satisfied." The lecturer rushes home, excited to please his wife. She's in the bathroom, so he decides this is the perfect time to try the trick. He takes out his manhood and whacks it on his desk 3 times. From the bathroom, he hears his wife shout, "Are you back again already, Andre?" A woman was with her boyfriend in her bedroom when she heard her husband coming up the front door. In a panic, she told her boyfriend, "Hurry, stand in the corner and do not move until I tell you to. Just shut your eyes and pretend you're a statue." "What's this, honey?" her husband asked, walking into the room. "Oh, it's just a statue," she replied nonchalantly. "Our neighbors bought one for their bedroom. I liked it so much I got one for us, too." They went to sleep, and then around 4 o'clock in the morning, the husband got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and came back with a sandwich and a glass of milk. "Here," he said to the statue. "Eat something. I stood like an idiot at the neighbors for 2 days, and nobody offered me so much as even a glass of water." A man and his wife are sitting down to dinner. "Ringling Brothers is coming to town this week," she said. "The poster says they have a dancing bear. I always wanted to see one of those." "Maybe next year," says the man. "Work's really busy this week." The next night at dinner, the man can barely sit down before his wife starts talking excitedly. "The neighbors went to the show today and said the tightrope walkers were doing the hokey pokey right up there on the wire. Can you even imagine? I'd love to take you," said the man. "But the boss'll be mad if I don't get this project finished." The following night, the wife gushed about how the paper boy told her about how a dozen clowns had popped out of this tiny car and did the can-can in bloomers, and it was about the funniest thing he ever saw. The man was starting to feel a little bad that he couldn't take her, but work was work. The night after, the wife was downcast. My book club said last night The Lion Tamer and the girl who rides the elephants did a waltz, and it was just perfectly romantic, she said. It feels like we're the only people in town who haven't seen the show yet, and they only have one more tomorrow. Oh, please, can't we go? The man thinks it over and decides that this might be the only opportunity for them to see such a thing, and maybe work can wait. He calls his friend to ask him to cover for him at work the next day, and the man and his wife go to bed excited about seeing the show. The next day at work, the boss notices the man is out and inquires about it with the friend. "Oh," says the friend, "he can't come in today due to 4 unseen circus dances." A husband and wife and their 10 kids are waiting to board the subway. When the subway arrives, it is nearly full. The husband tells his wife, "Honey, you should board this train with the kids, and I'll catch the next train." The wife does so, and the train departs with his wife and 10 children. While waiting for the train, there is an old man with a walker shuffling about. Each time he moves, there is an annoying screeching sound that comes bottom of his walker. It becomes so annoying the husband finally says, "Sir, can you please put some rubber on those ends of the walker so we can both wait for the next train peacefully?" The old man replies, "Well, if you had put a rubber on your end, we'd all be riding the train right now." A blonde walks into a pharmacy and asks for bottom deodorant. The assistant, a little bemused, explains to the woman they have never sold bottom deodorant. The blonde, unfazed, assures the lady behind the counter that she has been buying the stuff from here on a regular basis and would like some more. The shop assistant thinks for a minute, knowing full well that they don't stock or sell such an item, smiles at the blonde and says, "One moment, please. I will get the pharmacist." The pharmacist looks at the blonde and says, "Can I help you, miss?" "I would like to buy some bottom deodorant, please," says the blonde. "I'm sorry," says the pharmacist. "We don't have any. But I always get it here," says the blonde. "Do you have the container it comes in?" "Yes," said the blonde. "I will go and get it." She returns with the container and hands it to the pharmacist, who looks at it and says to the woman, "This is just a normal stick of underarm deodorant." The annoyed blonde snatches the container back and reads out loud from the container, "To apply, push up the bottom." A guy goes to work, and before he even gets a chance to sit, his personal assistant starts reporting our profits have diminished by 5%. We lost the job in China, meaning we look at another 10% losses by the end of the semester. Mr. Jones has given us his resignation. Your wife called and said that she is leaving you and she is taking the children with her, and the big boss wanted to see you ASAP, and he appeared to be very angry. So he looks at his personal assistant and asks, "All that you told me were so bloody negative. Do you have any positive news to give me?" "As a matter of fact, I do. The COVID test you did yesterday came back positive." A huge, muscular man with a tiny head walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender hands him the beer and says, "You know, I'm not gay, but I want to compliment you on your physique. It is really phenomenal. I have a question, though. Why is your head so small?" The big guy nods slowly. He's obviously answered this question many times. "One day," he begins, "I was hunting when I got lost in the woods. I heard someone crying for help and finally realized that it was coming from a frog sitting next to the stream. So I picked up the frog and it said, 'Kiss me. Kiss me, and I will turn into a genie and grant you 3 wishes.' So I looked around to make sure I was alone and gave the frog a kiss. Poof! The frog turned into a beautiful, voluptuous, naked woman. She said, 'You now have 3 wishes.' I looked at my scrawny 60 kilograms body and said, 'I want a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger.' She nodded, whispered a spell, and poof! There I was, so huge that I ripped out of my clothes and was standing there naked. She asked, 'What will be your second wish?' I looked hungrily at her beautiful body and replied, 'I want to make sensuous love with you here by this stream.' She nodded, laid down, and beckoned me. We then made love for hours. Later, as we lay there next to each other, sweating from our glorious lovemaking, she whispered into my ear, 'You know you do have one more wish. What will it be?' I looked at her and replied, "How about a little head?" An Aussie trucker walks into an outback cafe with a full-grown emu behind him. The waitress asks them for their orders. The trucker says, "A hamburger, chips, and a Coke," and turns to the emu, "What's yours?" "Sounds great. I'll have the same," says the emu. A short time later, the waitress returns with the order, "That will be $9.40, please." And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the exact change and pays. The next day, the man and the emu come again and he says, "A hamburger, chips, and a Coke." The emu says, "Sounds great, I'll have the same." Again, the trucker reaches into his pocket and pays with exact change. This becomes routine until the two enter again. "The usual?" asks the waitress. "No, it's Friday night, so I'll have a steak, baked potato, and a salad," says the man. "Same for me," says the emu. Shortly, the waitress brings the order and says, "That will be $32.62. Once again, the man pulls the exact change out of his pocket and places it on the table. The waitress cannot hold back her curiosity any longer. "Excuse me, mate, how do you manage to always pull the exact change from your pocket every time?" "Well, love," says the trucker, "a few years ago I was cleaning out the back shed and found an old lamp. When I cleaned it, a genie appeared and offered me 2 wishes. My first wish was that if I ever had to pay for anything, I would just put my hand in my pocket and the right amount of money would always be there." "That's brilliant," says the waitress. "Most people would ask for $1 million or something, but you'll always be as rich as you want for as long as you live." "That's right. Whether it's a gallon of milk or a Rolls Royce, the exact money is always there," says the man. Still curious, the waitress asks, "Then what's with the emu?" The trucker pauses, sighs, and answers, "My second wish was for a tall chick with a big rump and long legs who agrees with everything I say." It was the retirement dinner for Tim Simmons. He'd lived a long life. When he was only 25, he went on a mission trip to South America, where he met 2 young boys who he later adopted. Seeing the standard of living in South America prompted him to study medicine, a field he completely excelled in, and successfully developed vaccines for over 10 diseases. With the little money he earned from his hard work, he immediately donated it back into relief funds for all the places he'd visited. His co-workers all loved him. Ask anyone, and they all say he was the most positive and bright man they'd ever met. This is why it came as no surprise that during his retirement dinner, an angel descended from heaven to speak with him. "You have lived a giving life, one that many could look up to and many relied on to survive. Because of this, we would like to give you a gift, a long and healthy life, all the wealth you could imagine, or unparalleled wisdom." Tim debates between longevity and wisdom for half a breath, but very quickly decides he wants unparalleled wisdom. The angel reaches down, touches his forehead, and leaves without another word. The guests at the dinner, still in a partial state of shock, stare in silence at the slack-jawed man. Eventually, his co-worker and closest friend speaks up. "Well, how is it?" The room was silent for a few seconds while Tim mulled over the question. "I should have chosen the bloody money," he said. A poor old lady was forced to sell her valuables to avoid eviction. As she rummaged through her dusty belongings, she came across a dull copper kettle. Intrigued by its possible value, the old woman dusted it off, and bam! A genie erupted from its neck. The genie says, "I have seen your plights and will grant you 3 wishes. The woman, astounded, thinks for a moment and says, "Age has taken its toll on me. I wish to be young and beautiful once more." Bam! In a sudden flash, the old woman emerged, a ravishing young woman. Thrilled by her success, the woman says, "Genie, I want to live a life of grandeur, to be rich." Bam! With a snap of the genie's fingers, the room swirled and transformed into a great hall. Her once broken cottage had become a mansion. Upon looking down, the woman noticed her worn clothing had been replaced with a stunning dress and shining heels. While she marveled at this outcome, the genie stood solemnly. "You have 1 wish left," he thundered. The woman thought about this for a while, and then felt a slight brush against her leg. It was her old cat, frightened by the building's transformation. The woman looked up at the genie and said, "This cat has been faithfully with me for all my years. Please transform him into a human man so that we may spend many happy days together." Bam! In a blinding flash, the cat had vanished. Standing in his place was a tall, dark-haired, handsome young man. Immediately enamored by her new love, the woman fell into his arms. The genie, his work complete, disappeared. As she gazed into his eyes, he drew her close and whispered, "I bet you wish you hadn't had me fixed." Her 3 daughters got married at the same time and went off to their honeymoons to different places. All 3 promised their anxious mother that they would send postcards to let her know how their honeymoon was going. A week goes by and she receives a postcard from her eldest daughter, but it only says the words Benson and Hedges. Curious, the mother looks for the cigarette's advertisement in a magazine and grins slyly as she reads the slogan, "Extra large, king size. The length you go for pleasure." After another week, there is a postcard from her second daughter, and it says Maxwell House Coffee. With a knowing smile, she read the slogan for the coffee in a magazine, "Good till the last drop." While relieved knowing that her 2 daughters are having a good time, she was somewhat worried about her youngest until the 3rd postcard finally arrived after a month. It said British Airways, the advertisement for which she gasped as she read was 7 days a week, twice daily, both ways each time. A new Navy recruit has his first day on the submarine. He speaks with the officer who assigns him his post. Go stand at the periscope entryway and make sure no unauthorized personnel touch the periscope. The recruit follows orders and stands by the periscope. After 15 minutes, the officer stops by. "Son, I'm changing your post to the mess hall. Go in there and start washing some dishes." The recruit obeys and heads to the mess hall. He's cleaned about 3 dishes when the officer walks up again. "Listen here, recruit. Your new post is in the supply room. I need you to make sure everything is strapped down tight in case of rough waters." The recruit again follows orders and heads off to the supply room. There, he sees a crewman moving some boxes. "Hey there," says the recruit. "Is it normal to keep getting reassigned to new posts all day? I haven't kept one position for more than 15 minutes." The crewman says, "Oh yeah, this sub is full of reposts." A man from Los Angeles took a job in San Francisco, leaving his 70-year-old widowed mother of 6 months to fend for herself. As her birthday was approaching, he went around asking his coworkers for ideas to get his mom a birthday gift. None of their ideas appealed to him until someone suggested a pair of talking birds for $500 each, and explained that he had gotten his own mother a pair and that she absolutely loved them. His coworker added that they were no ordinary talking birds, that they could impersonate actors, dance, and tell jokes. But it will take them a day or 2 to get used to the new place, and they won't talk until then. So he buys the birds and has them shipped to his mother. He calls her on her birthday the following morning. Mom answers, and her son says, "Happy birthday, Mom." She says, "Oh, thank you, dear." He asks, "So, Mom, did my gift arrive?" She says, "Yes, it did, and I enjoyed them very much." "Thank you, son. They were delicious. I plucked the feathers and cooked them like little game hens." "No, Mom, please tell me you're kidding," he said. She assured him that she wasn't, and he proceeded to tell her about the price of the birds and everything they were capable of doing. "Wait," she said, "those birds could talk." "Yes, Mom. They sang and danced and they talked." "Well then, why the hell didn't they say something?" An old man walks into a bar. He apologizes to the barman. He has no money. But if he were allowed to entertain the clientele, maybe the barman could give him a drink on the house. The barman tells him to go ahead. The old man reaches into a bag beside him and takes out a harmonica, then a tin box, and finally a duck. He places the box on the floor, the duck on the box, and plays the harmonica. To everyone's amazement, the duck dances a jig like nobody has ever seen before. The barman happily gives the old man a few drinks and even asks him to call another evening. It even becomes a regular thing. One of the patrons of the bar thinks he could make good money on this, follows the old man out one night, and offers him a sum of money the old man can't believe. The deal is done, and they each go their own way. A few days later, the old man is walking along the street when a car pulls up abruptly beside him. The guy who bought the duck jumps out angry and accuses the old man of conning him out of his money. The old man calms him and asks what the problem is. The guy has the duck with him and gives it to the old man. Look, I put down the box, I put the duck on the box, and I play the harmonica. He plays the harmonica and the duck just sits there. The old man looks at him like he's stupid and says, "You forgot to light the candle." A Montana cowboy was overseeing his herd in a remote mountainous pasture when suddenly a brand new BMW advanced out of a dust cloud toward him. The driver, a young man in a Brioni suit, Gucci shoes, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and a YSL tie, leans out the window and asks the cowboy, "If I tell you exactly how many cows and calves you have in your herd, will you give me a calf?" The cowboy looks at the man, obviously a yuppie, then looks at his peacefully grazing herd and calmly answers, "Sure, why not?" The yuppie parks his car, whips out his Dell notebook computer, connects it to his iPhone cell phone, and surfs to a NASA page on the internet, where he calls up a GPS satellite navigation system to get an exact fix on his location, which he then feeds to another NASA satellite that scans the area in an ultra-high-resolution photo. The young man then opens the digital photo in Adobe Photoshop and exports it to an image processing facility in Hamburg, Germany. Within seconds, he receives an email on his iPad that the image has been processed and the data stored. He then accesses an MS SQL database through an ODBC-connected Excel spreadsheet with email on his BlackBerry and, after a few minutes, receives a response. Finally, he prints out a full-color 150-page report on his high-tech miniaturized HP LaserJet printer and finally turns to the cowboy and says, "You have exactly 1,586 cows and calves." "That's right." "Well, I guess you can take one of my calves," says the cowboy. He watches the young man select one of the animals and looks on amused as the young man stuffs it into the trunk of his car. Then the cowboy says to the young man, "Hey, if I can tell you exactly what your business is, will you give me back my calf?" The young man thinks about it for a second and then says, "Okay, why not?" "You're a congressman in the U.S. government," says the cowboy. "Wow, that's correct," says the yuppie. "But how did you guess that?" "No guessing required," answered the cowboy. "You showed up here even though nobody called you. You want to get paid for an answer I already knew to a question I never asked. You tried to show me how much smarter than me you are, and you don't know a thing about cows. This is a herd of sheep. Now give me back my dog." A transport ship goes down in the middle of the Atlantic quickly enough that no distress signal gets sent. After the ship had been overdue for 10 days, a rescue was dispatched. 5 days after that, they come across an island and send men ashore. There, they find 4 women lounging in emergency tents, sipping Perrier and munching on various items from the well-provisioned emergency kit. The captain of the rescue team says, "I can't tell you how excited I am to see you ladies alive, safe, and apparently unharmed and enjoying yourselves." One of the ladies says, "Well, in all fairness, those emergency survival kits have absolutely everything. If it hadn't been for the one we had, we'd have never made it." The captain nods and says, "Excellent, excellent. They were designed to save lives, and that's what this one did. There's a 5-digit code required to access the contents. Did you have any trouble with that?" The lady says, "No. It was the very first thing in the little book that was in the plastic bag on the side of the kit that said instructions in big red letters." They load the grateful ladies aboard and resume the search. 100 miles away, they encounter another island. Upon landing ashore, they find 4 dead men and an unopened survival kit. A man and his wife were on a driving holiday and looking for a hotel for the night. When they found one, the manager said, "Yes, we have a room, and it's $100 for the night." That was well outside their budget, so they politely turned the offer down and asked if there was anywhere cheaper in the vicinity. The manager replied, "Yes, in fact, there is an old hotel just up the road, and it's only $25 a night. But I'll warn you now, there have been many reports of the place being haunted." The couple thought nothing of it and made their way to the cheaper hotel. When they arrived, they paid the $25 and, out of curiosity, asked the manager about the reported hauntings. The manager said, Oh, that's just my rivals trying to drive me out of business. I've never seen any sign of a ghost in the 250 years I've been here.